Feminist film theory began to take shape in the 1970s and is associated with the activities of the British magazine Screen. The purpose of this theory was to reveal how patriarchal ideology structures visual representations of gender and differences between the sexes. One of the early works was Laura Mulvey's essay Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, in which the author examines the paradoxical role of women in Hollywood cinema. In narrative cinema, women are content with the subordinative position, the role of the other in relations to men, who act as universal subjects of what is happening on the screen. Mulvey describes the male audience precisely because cinema is an extension of patriarchal ideology, whereby female appearance is encoded to achieve intense visual and erotic impact. At the same time, a woman is likened to being underlooked and is reproduced as a passive object. To describe this phenomenon, Mulvey uses the term voyeurism, the desire to look at others, especially something forbidden, while remaining invisible. The male hero becomes a gaze bearer, which implies additional power in the sense that he serves as a point of identification for the viewer. The relationship is part of the structural basis of the dominant cinema. It allows the cinematographic apparatus to deny its role in perpetuating the sexist ideologies of a patriarchal society. These techniques, as we have seen, are still actively used in films by male directors, including modern South Korean ones. Gradually, feminist film studies led to the emergence of an alternative women's counter cinema, in which female directors construct gender roles and highlight aspects of inequality through the prism of women's vision and perspective. This trend has emerged in South Korean cinema with the emergence of the so-called feminist wave in recent years. The films of young South Korean female directors can be interpreted not so much from the standpoint of dominance through the privilege of looking at male or female bodies' eroticism, but from the point of view of exposing the traditionally assigned secondary role to female characters, following the prescribed norms and standards of society without including their own understanding and feelings what is happening. Therefore, female directors rely on appropriate visual means, using mainly medium and medium wide shots and soft editing, whereby showing that all characters have equal rights and there is no superiority to one over another, whether they are older or male. The female directors of the feminist wave are not very concerned with love relationships, the depiction of sexual domination. They focus more on the socio-cultural aspects of modern Korean society, on entrenched practices of gender inequality that are better seen from the side of the so-called oppressed class. For example, the practices of preferring son in Korean families, which clearly stunk girls in the structure of family upbringing. The practice of dual employment of women at home and at work, also the role of the father as the breadwinner of the family was manifested in society, and many others. For this reason, the analyzed films are perceived in South Korea as countercultural and provoke fierce criticism from young men and anti-feminists. Feminist studies are closely related to cultural studies in the field of film, mass media, and literature. According to this approach, culture is defined in terms of the struggle for and access to cultural capital, for the production of identities within and through cultural representations. Culture, from the point of view of the supporters of cultural studies, acts not only as a legitimation of social inequality, it also offers ways to overcome it. Any revolution from the socialist to the women's liberation movement begins with a struggle to reassess cultural values and change cultural policy. The cultural politics of class, gender, and race is a struggle to make visible the history and culture of a given social group. It is a struggle against a dominant ideology that had usurped the right to name, to naturalize the so-called common sense for the presentation of official versions and the reconstruction of the historical past. Cultural practices, representations are a major topic of feminist discussion precisely because today the power relations associated with the sexist practices are becoming more and more visible. Drawing heavily on the traditions of cultural studies, feminist film criticism draws on the ideas of Marxism and left-wing politics. Drawing on the experiment of progressive political movements and articulating issues outside the academic world, contributing to a better understanding of power relations and inequality. The challenge for feminist film studies is not only to expose the sexist portrayal of women, but also to rethink the relationship between gender, power, and cinema. Women directors work in urban drama to support family values, but they recognize that the models of the modern family have changed a lot, which ultimately forces the narrative to change as well. Women are pushing for a different view of men and women, instead of mythologizing and poeticizing reality and the subject. They rather use a critical look. Women love nuances, details, which often form a stereotypical view of the subject. They seem to keep in mind that cinema is not only entertainment, performance, philosophy, political message, but also a kind of study of people and their weaknesses, and at the same time an instrument of psychological and social therapy. The analysis of the film was carried out mainly on the basis of elements of contextual analysis, which contributes to a better disclosure of the social content of the films. Helmut Korte, in his book, presented a model of film analysis based on such contextual factors as facts about the film, facts about the origin of the film, the actual basis of the film, and facts of influence. Therefore, the methods of collecting empirical data was a content analysis of films by South Korean female directors, highlighting such units of observation as key characters, duration and number of appearances per frame, general characteristics of the film participants, which made it possible to identify the key themes of films. We also analyzed the reviews of Russian and foreign film critics, as well as the reviews of the audience, which contain reactions to the gender issues of the studied films. A system analysis of a film, according to Helmut Korte, implies, in addition to contextual analysis, an overview of the visual means of cinematography, the scale of the plan, the movement of the camera, the connection between the installation plans, the shooting angle. It is worth noting that the films of South Korean young female directors Yoon Ga-yeon, Chon Go-eun, Kim Bo-ra, and Kim Do-yeon immerse viewers in the everyday world of South Korean girls and young women. This is facilitated by the general and average general plans of films, which allow observers of events to identify themselves with the heroines of films, to sympathize and emphasize. The audience seems to find themselves in the families of the main characters, schools, places of their work. The directors do not abuse close-ups, thus do not put pressure on the emotions of the audience. On the contrary, they strive to depict the ups and downs in which the female characters find themselves as objectively as possible. We have identified the main themes in Korean women's cinema. Among them are the socialization of girls, self-determination of women, and women in Korean family. Let us consider the highlighted topics one by one.